All right, let's look up. So we'll be considering carbohydrates. Carbohydrates. Now, first we are going to look at two things: the definition of carbohydrates and the functions of carbohydrates. Now, formally, carbohydrate was defined as hydrate of carbon, right? Carbohydrate. In fact, that was how the name came about. Hydrate of carbon. Now, if you look at this, we have carbon, and hydrate is talking about water, right? H2O. This was the general formula of carbohydrates. So carbohydrate was formally defined as hydrate of carbon. But as time went on, it discovered that some carbohydrate did not fit into that definition. And so the recent and the most accepted definition of carbohydrates is defined as a polyhydroxy aldehyde or ketone, or any substance that hits such on hydrolysis. That's carbohydrates. Any polyhydroxy aldehyde or polyhydroxy ketone, or any substance that when you hydrolyze will hit polyhydroxy aldehyde or polyhydroxy ketone is referred to as what? Carbohydrate. So carbohydrate is what? Polyhydroxy what? Aldehyde or what? Ketone, or substances that hit such on hydrolysis. What does that mean? If you have something like this, is this an aldehyde or a ketone? This functional group here, is it an aldehyde or a ketone? Aldehyde, right? How do we recognize an aldehyde? The carbonyl carbon is always at the terminal. Carbonyl carbon is carbon doubly bonded to oxygen. It's always at the terminal. But if you have another one like this, where is the carbonyl carbon? Between two alkyl chains, right? You see that the carbonyl carbon here is between two alkyl chains. So this one is a ketone. Why this one is what? An aldehyde. So if you check, how many hydroxy group do we have here? In this case, we have two, right? In this case, we also have two. Polyhydroxy, a compound having many hydroxy group. So carbohydrate can be defined as any aldehyde having many hydroxy group, or any ketone having many hydroxy group, or any substance that when you break them down, when you hydrolyze, you will have an aldehyde or ketone that have many hydroxy group. Is called carbohydrates. Do you understand that? So if you're asked to define carbohydrates, don't tell them hydrates of carbon. Tell them polyhydroxy aldehyde or what? Ketone, or substances that hit such on what? Hydrolysis. Now, having known what carbohydrates are, let's look at the functions of carbohydrates. Right from primary school, we were told that carbohydrates is energy-giving food. True or false? Good. But here, we will not stop there. How is it actually giving us energy? The functions of carbohydrates. One, it is the major source, the main source of energy in the body. Do you know that some parts of our body, some organs, depend on only carbohydrate as source of energy? That is, without carbohydrates, any other form of energy they will not accept. Take for example your brain. Your brain depends only on glucose for energy. So if there is no glucose, if there is no carbohydrate, glucose is carbohydrate, right? If there is no carbohydrate, your brain will not accept energy from any other source. Erythrocytes, the same thing. So carbohydrates are the main sources of energy we have in our body. When we take in carbohydrate foods, it will pass from our mouth. Your mouth is somewhere here, your gullet to your stomach, right? And from your stomach to your small intestine. And digestion ends where? In the small intestine, is it not? Now, as digestion ends, the nutrients, that is the monosaccharides now, will be absorbed from this small intestine into your bloodstream. The undigested part of the food will now go to the large intestine, and be stored temporarily in the rectum. Now, the nutrients in your bloodstream, now the glucose in your bloodstream, we can undergo breakdown. The glucose can be broken down to give you energy. We're going to talk more about that. The glucose can be broken down to give you energy. Now, excess glucose can be transported to be stored, right? So, what you have to know at this point is one function of carbohydrate is serve as what? The main source of energy for the body. Now, number two, storage form of energy. For the carbohydrates also serve as storage form of energy. Take for example, you went for a function, let's say a wedding, and getting there, you took like 3 plates of rice. After taking the 3 plates of rice, you took the first one, you finished it. Took the second one, you finished it. Your stomach was filled up already. But the third plate, you said if you take this third plate to the hostel or to your house, it's no longer your own. So, you decided that instead of food to waste, maybe boss, you decided to finish the 3 plates of rice. Now, you agree with me that rice is carbohydrate food, right? At that point, after the food has been digested, the glucose level in your blood, will it be high or low? It will be very high, right? Because you ate carbohydrate, too much carbohydrate. So the glucose level will be high in your bloodstream. Your body will now observe and say, this girl does not have what to eat tomorrow. If I don't store some of this excess glucose now, so that when she has low glucose, I will release it. Tomorrow, this girl might die. So your body now will not convert the excess glucose in your blood, the excess, transport it to your liver, and in your liver it will be stored as what? Glycogen. In your liver it will be stored as glycogen. So glycogen is the storage form of carbohydrates in what? In animals, right? But in plants, the storage form of carbohydrates is what? Is starch. So carbohydrates serve as storage form of energy. Now, I said something here. We've said two things, right? That carbohydrates is the main source of energy, right? And also serve as storage form of energy. Now, the end product of carbohydrate digestion is monosaccharide, right? Like glucose. Now, that glucose can be broken down. The end product of that breakdown, we'll look at it, is pyruvate. And in the process, energy in the form of ATP is given off. The energy currency of the cell is what? ATP, right? Just like Naira is the currency of Nigeria. If dollar comes in, before you use it to buy something from that market woman, you have to change it to Naira, is it not? If any other form of energy is in the body, it must be converted to ATP because that's what the body recognizes. All right, so this process whereby glucose is broken down to give us energy is called what? Glycolysis. Lysis means breakdown, right? We are breaking down glucose. So, source of energy, the glucose is broken down to give us energy. Now we said excess glucose can be transported to where? The liver, right? To be stored as what? Glycogen. So excess glucose is stored as glycogen. Now the process whereby that excess glucose is converted to glycogen for storage is called what? Glycogenesis. Glycogenesis. And be stored. Then when your blood glucose level becomes low, if your blood glucose level becomes low, what will happen? The excess glycogen, the glycogen that was in your liver now, the excess that was in your liver will be broken down to release free glucose. That is when the blood glucose is low. The stored glycogen will be broken down to release free glucose back. The process whereby this glycogen is broken down to release free glucose is called what? Glycogenolysis. Lysis means breakdown, right? We are breaking down glycogen to release free glucose. We'll talk more about this as we go on. But for now, what I expect you to know is carbohydrate is a source of energy, right? Main source of energy in the body. And it's also the storage form of energy. And we said in plants, carbohydrate is stored as what? While in animals, it's stored as what? Glycogen. Now, excess carbohydrates can be stored as fat. Excess carbohydrates can be stored as body fats also. Now, in the subcutaneous tissues under the skin, we have fat tissues referred to as adipose tissues. Now, carbohydrates, excess carbohydrates can be converted to fat for storage. As we go on in this course, we'll see how that is done. Another function, it serves as structural components of many organisms. For example, cellulose. Cellulose is a structural component of the cell walls of plants. In fact, cellulose is a major component of the cell wall of plants. We have another one, peptidoglycan. Peptidoglycan is a major component, it's a carbohydrate, major component in the cell wall of bacteria. We have, pronounce this for me. Pronounce this for me. Please, this is not cheating. This is chitin. This is the major component of the exoskeletons of insects. So all these things are carbohydrates. Now, they serve as structural components of many organisms, just like we've seen cellulose, we've seen chitin, we've seen peptidoglycan. So for now, just note that carbohydrates serve as structural components of many organisms. All right, that being said, the last one here, the last function we have here, said carbohydrates serve as structural framework, or is part of the structural framework of DNA and what? RNA. Now, DNA and RNA, you agree with me that DNA and RNA are the two types of nucleic acid, right? And nucleic acid is a macromolecule, true or false? And the building block of nucleic acid is what? The building block of nucleic acid is what? Nucleotides. Nucleotides. As a building block of nucleic acid. Please, if you want to know more about nucleic acid, it's already on my channel. So go there, you see it. It's in a playlist there. Now, nucleotides is the building block of nucleic acid. And this nucleotide is made up of three things. What, and what? Nitrogenous bases, pentose sugar, and phosphate group. Now, this pentose, in fact, in biochemistry, any word you say ending with ose is what? Sugar. Ending with ose is sugar. So this is sugar, and this is a carbohydrate, right? So you see that carbohydrate is part of the structure. It's part of the structural framework of nucleic acids. Carbohydrate, pentose. The two pentose we can have is either ribose or deoxyribose. But we'll go more. I will say something about this as we go on. But for now, note that structural framework of DNA and RNA, carbohydrates can be there. And we've seen it as the pentose sugar here. So these are some of the functions of carbohydrates. What I've said so far is carbohydrates is defined as polyhydroxy what? Aldehydes or what? Or substances that heat such on hydrolysis. And we've seen the functions of carbohydrates. Any question? Any question? No question.